pre-calculus students. I'm going to explain some of the answers to the 8.3 Part 2 homework. If this video still doesn't help you, you can always meet during a Google Meet on our even days when our class meets from 11 to 11:30 in the morning. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and start. So for the beginning equation, this one, number 1, A is 2. B is understood to be 1 because this is 2 times the cosine of 1 times quantity x plus pi. And that means that the amplitude is 2. And since b is 1, the period of this function is going to be 2 pi divided by 1, which is 2 pi. H is understood to be negative pi here. And k is understood to be negative 3. So that means that everything here is going to be shifted down 3 units. If the amplitude is 2, normally the wave goes from negative 2 to positive 2. But since everything is shifted down 3 units, the maximum will now be 2 minus 3, or negative 1. And this minimum value of negative 2 will be shifted down to negative 5. So to make the box, I'm going to make the top of the box at negative 1. And the bottom of the box at negative 5, where the max and min values are. The cosine wave, if we take a look in Desmos, normally begins at the maximum value of 0, comma, whatever the amplitude is. I'm going to change it to 2, so 0, comma 2. So that means that this wave, since h is negative pi, that means that this wave is going to start at negative pi. Move back to the left pi units. So that's where the left side of the box is, at negative pi. Since the period is 2 pi, I'm going to move 1 pi, 2 pi units over to 2 pi and draw the right side of the box. So there's my box, right there. And for a cosine wave, you plot the maximum values at the beginning and the end first. Right in the center, you plot the minimum value. And in between the max and min values, you're going to plot points on the axis of the wave. And there is one cycle of this function. Okay, now let's look at number 2 in the homework. You have to excuse the noise. They're doing construction outside of my house. So for this particular function, I can see that A is 3. That means that the amplitude of this wave is 3. And B is 4. It's just inside the parentheses with the x, but it's still 4. So that means the period of this function is 2 pi over b, which is 2 pi over 4, which is half of pi, or pi over 2. The value of k in this case is positive 2, because that's what's being subtracted from y here. So that means that everything is shifted up 2 units. So my minimum of negative 3 is shifted up 2 units to negative 1. And my maximum value of 3 is also shifted up 2 units to positive 5. So the top of the box is going to be where y equals 5. And the bottom of the box is going to be where y equals negative 1. In this particular case, h is 0. There's nothing being added or subtracted from x. And since the sine wave normally begins at the middle of the wave right on the y-axis, that's not going to change here. Let me go back to the graph. So it's still going to start on the y-axis. The only thing is everything is shifted up 2 units. So instead of starting at 0, 0, it's going to start at 0, comma 2. So that's where the left side of the box is going to go, right along the y-axis. The right side of the box is going to be at half of pi, pi over 2. And I didn't mark it here, but this is pi, so this is half of pi. Notice how I broke it into 4 units, 1, 2, 3, 4, for half of pi. So there is the box right here, along the y-axis, where y equals negative 1, at the end of the period where x is half of pi, and at the maximum where y equals 5. So there's one cycle. To plot a sine wave, I plot the beginning and the end right on the axis of the wave, or the midline. And I plot another point on the midline right in the middle of those two. And then in between these two values, I go up to the maximum first, as long as a is positive, and it is, up to the maximum first. And then in between these two, I'm going to go down to the minimum of negative 1. And there's one complete cycle. To do another cycle, you can do this plot the same kind of box, same dimensions behind or in front. And there's 2 full cycles. And as always, if this doesn't help, you can always go to a Google Meet and get some further help there.